So let's go and speak about the two human beings who will be joining on our screen in just 1 minute. We have Mel Barfield, who is not from Hrefs, but runs her own freelance copywriting business and is phenomenal. Mel works with us and we love working with her. We have a partner in crime on the Indie Business podcast, the Indie Business Club, with who is Ben McKinney. Both are TMM community members, which I love when we can get TMM community members elevated on the stage to hear their experiences. Both are brilliant human beings. Today we'll run purely as a Q&A, so it'll be a conversation between Mel, Ben and myself and all of you. So please do keep the chat feature going because we'd love to hear those experiences from you. Before we get going on today's session, I just want to say a big thank you to our sponsors. This week's featured sponsor is a company called Planable. Now, Planable is our preferred social media scheduling and content scheduling platform, and they've just released a brand new feature, which is like properly mega. Because for folks who are aware and use social media scheduling platforms all the time, the ability to not only post, but then also reply to comments becomes a real insane feature to have. And that's exactly what Planable have just released. So if you want to check that out, then you can get a free trial of Planable at that QR code. And they are absolutely fabulous human beings as well. Also, a big thank you to our other sponsors. So we have Cambridge Martin College, we have Known, we have Planable and Frontify. They're all absolutely fantastic companies without whom we wouldn't be able to bring these events to you. So with all that said, that's the introduction done. And we have Mel and we have Ben on screen right now, which is wicked. So Mel, Ben, you are both absolute legends. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Joe.
Don't stop.
You're both here with your proper microphones as well, which I'm very impressed. And folks are loving your plants, Mel. So Mel, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Because I've said you're a lovely person, but I haven't necessarily told people what you do particularly well.
I mean, thank you for saying I'm a lovely person for a start. I am an award-winning copywriter and co-host of the Indie Business Club podcast. I've just seen a few listeners in the comments, so thank you. Host it with Ben. And I also write for Freelancer magazine and have several retained clients for copywriting services, including the Marketing Meetup. And I also work at Copy or Die with Ben. And the last thing I want to mention is that I'm also an event speaker. So
Nice.
book me, because I've got the goal of international event speaker. So if anyone's in like Dublin or something, that'd be great.
It only needs to happen once, and then
And you
it
have
can go in the
then it
LinkedIn.
counts. Virtual counts
Exactly.
as well.
Absolutely. And as Tamara says, with a serious green thumb. So.
The trick is to just buy new ones quite regularly.
Love that. Ben, would you be able to do the same, please, mate?
Yeah, hi Joe, hi everyone. I'm Ben McKinney. I run Copy or Die with Dave Harland, who I know has been on one of these webinars before, and Mel works with us too. And then the two of us host Indie Business Club, the podcast for independent creatives, freelancers, founders and business owners. I'm an occasional speaker as well, and just really excited to be here.
What a legend. And like people say from time to time that they like my voice on the AMSR sort of level, but Ben, I think you're winning, mate. So like that's fabulous.
Thank you, Joe.
Don't encourage him.
Oh, wait. I can see that we're in trouble for today's session. Right, let's get going with understanding your first steps and what triggered each of you to head into freelancing. Because I think, first of all, there'll be some folks on the call today, some folks listening back who aren't currently freelancing, who have been thinking about it. And like, it's so hard to know when is the moment to take the dive. So Ben, when did you take the jump into freelancing?
Well, I didn't call it freelancing at the time. I called it being self-employed, but I was 21, so it's 22 years ago, and I wanted to travel. I wanted to go on holiday. I'd come out of college and got what I thought was, at the time, kind of my dream job. I was training as a journalist, as a sports reporter, and I did that for a couple of years and just unsociable hours, lousy salary. All of my mates were either off traveling on gap years, they'd gone to university, they'd come out of university and were doing some traveling. And I just wanted to go on holiday a bit. I wanted to see the world. And I wanted two things, I suppose. I wanted some freedom, but I wanted a bit of control in terms of kind of what I was doing, how much I earned, how I earned, and when I worked. And yeah, the kind of the only thing to do at that point was to go self-employed. I wouldn't even say freelance. And then when I would say my freelance career started was about 8 years ago. I retrained as a freelance copywriter, and that was because I just started a family with my wife, and I wanted to work from home a bit more. I was doing quite a lot of traveling for work, and I just wanted to be at home initially 2 days a week, and then the goal was to build it out and to work at home full time so I could be around.
Nice. I love that. And so if I just follow up on that very last sentence there, so initially 2 days a week and then to move into doing it full time. So that in itself seems like a really smart thing to do. So did you have a chat with various folks and sort of say, I'd like to move it to that place, or did you, how did that transition work?
Honestly, I wasn't in any communities. I didn't know any people really that were doing freelance work.
Hmm.
I'd built myself a business. It was a window cleaning business. Kind of, it's the thing that people talk about to me when they meet me these days. But yeah, I built a business, and initially it was just going to be I was going to do that for 2 years in my early 20s,
Hmm.
work for a little bit, go away for a few months, come back, pick it up, and then after a couple of years, I thought I'd get a proper job, and that business just continued to grow, and eventually to the point where I was employing people and all that kind of thing, but it was taking me away from home more often than I wanted to. And it was just a case of I wanted a kind of a life reset, I suppose. I wanted to do something different, and I didn't think that I could just stop and
Nice.
kind of start something new. I felt like I needed a transition, and I went
Mm.
back and forth over that decision for a long time and for a long time afterwards, because there were times when the freelance thing was going really, really slowly, and actually I was like, man, I should have just stopped and put everything into it and seen what happened. I think in the long run, having the kind of the soft start of the existing business and being able to just kind of go into it slowly and naturally was a good thing. But at the time, it felt like, yeah, it was quite a challenge to keep thinking, is this going to work? There was a couple of times where I nearly stopped and just thought, I just need to concentrate on one thing,
Yeah.
the existing business, and not worry about the new thing. But I'm glad I stuck with it because it's led to really good things.
Love that. Thank you for sharing, mate. How about you, Mel?
Like a lot of freelancers I know, COVID played a big part in my freelance journey. I was suddenly not furloughed because I worked at the time for local government, so there's no furlough for us. And I was expected to do my normal hours, which was part time because I had two young children already by then, and homeschool at the same time, and it was quite hellish. And actually, looking back, a lot of elements of the way I was treated in that role, I'm like, I should have gone to tribunal or something.
Mm.
Things like coming back from maternity leave to find like 50% extra workload despite me dropping my hours. Those kind of like things that the horror stories you hear about people who have caring responsibilities, like the way they can sometimes be treated in work. And then I blame Sophie Cross for me being freelance because it was the timing of her launching the Kickstarter for Freelancer magazine. That was around the winter of my discontent, and I saw it just kept winking at me. And I often mention this when I do talks about luck and careers and things. I'm actually a qualified careers advisor, so my favourite, if you can have a favourite career theory, was around happenstance and how chance things can happen, and how if you kind of follow things that take your interest, you can end up in a good place. So it kept winking at me. So I backed the Kickstarter, even though I had no real plan about going freelance. Meanwhile, did actually did the same course that Ben did, not at the same time, but a course in copywriting through work. They paid for it, so thanks for that at least, work. And just felt like this is what I should have been doing my whole career because it just fit so well with what I'm good at and what I'm interested in. And so those two things coming together made me decide to take the leap. I should acknowledge my privilege though, because my husband was able to give me um, that launch of like being able to go all in, because he was like, well, I can cover the bills for, we'll see where we are in 6 months, and then you might have to get a proper job. Thankfully, touch wood, that was in January 2022. I went freelance. So far, so good.
Nice.
And yeah, the best decision I ever made was going freelance.
I love that. What I really appreciate from both your answers is a few things really. That the first of all, it doesn't seem like there's one answer for anyone. You know, it may be something that is forced upon you. For example, COVID and your situation, Mel, but Ben, yours was a bit more of a continual choice in your business. Um, the fact that both of you acknowledged that it was really hard to start as well, to get to that place, but the fact that both of you have reflected positively on the experience as well, with the benefit of hindsight, is really encouraging. So, like, thank you both for starting that way and starting that story, and likewise, thank you everyone for sharing your stories already in the chat. There's a lot of folks sharing their different situations here. There's a few people I've seen, and I don't want to name them out loud just in case their employer's watching, but sort of considering going freelance right now. And
Do it.
I love it. Well, let's help them. So, what are the very first steps that someone should take when considering to go freelance? What are the first things that you almost wish you would have done when you first started? And Mel, I'll go to you to you first, if that's okay.
Well, having just said that I had the privilege of a husband paying the bills, it certainly do the maths on how much you'd need to be bringing in, because sometimes it might be less than you think. A lot of people go into freelancing with this goal of matching their old salary, but you've got to consider all the other expenses that you incur with your employed role as well. Obviously, they pay your pension and your holiday and that kind of thing. But are there other elements of stuff you have to pay for? Like my friend Bonnie pointed out, when she stopped teaching and went freelance, she no longer had to have the emotional comfort latte on the way to on the way to work, or that kind of expense. There's no commute to pay for anymore, and a lot of your expenses that you incur as a freelancer are tax deductible. So do the maths and look at how much you actually need to be bringing in, and then that'll give you a steer on whether it's realistic. And also to do the research on the market, because as we know, especially in marketing, things be changing very quickly. And so make sure that there is actually a need for what you want to be doing, because it's all very well having something that you absolutely adore and could do for free. If don't do it for free, but that something that you'd be happy to do for the rest of your life. If there's no one willing to pay for that skill or that activity or that whatever, then it's not going to be a very long-lived freelance dream. And the other thing is to build your network. That is my number one tip, is to get to know people in the industry. Don't see people in the same industry as a threat, see them as friends, and start building your network. And you can do that before you go out on your own as a freelancer. I strongly recommend you start building your network by coming to stuff like this, connecting with people, going to networking events, in real life marketing meetup events, places like Co-work Crew, freelance magazines, virtual co-working. Just try and get yourself in as many places where other people are that are doing what you want to do. It rubs off.
Love that so much. Thank you, Mel. And honestly, my heart is glowing from your response there, and the usefulness and the directness of the practicality of it, but also just the chat feature as well. So many folks sharing their experiences here. So too many
I
to
can't
read
wait
out
to
all at
read them
once.
later. I'm
I
being
know.
really strict with myself and not getting distracted by the chat.
Don't get distracted. Yeah, it's all good. Um, I'm gonna come back and ask you the same, Ben, because I want to get that first tip. But Mel, in your answer there, you said about um, knowing how much you had to earn, and that the obvious next question from that is about pricing. And I know that you've done a recent episode of your podcast around pricing. I wondered whether you could give me just 2 or 3 highlights from that podcast, and then maybe we can encourage folks to listen to the full thing elsewhere.
There are 2 episodes on pricing, actually, Joe, and
Nice.
counting, because
Oh,
we're probably going to have to come back to it, because
Such a big subject, isn't it?
it's
huge.
huge. It's a huge subject, and also one that I don't feel like I'm, how many years in, 3.5 years in, and I still don't feel like it's something I can do with huge confidence. Main highlights, I suppose, would be the benchmark of what your industry day rate is can be useful. So for copywriters, it's really handy because there's a survey by pro copywriters, but don't let that kind of tether you down, as well as like being aspirational for some. It can hold people back a little bit. We'd always advocate for. This is where I go, do as we say, not as we do, because we sometimes don't necessarily do this ourselves, even with the best will in the world. It's if you can price by project as an overall project rate, that's
Mhm.
better, because then it allows, if you're charging by day rate, if you're having a bit of an off day, then that client who's booked you for that day is not going to get as much out of you as if you're having an amazing day where everything's going well, the coffee is hot and pumping. Um, so the day rate thing, like, you're just exchanging time for money. So
Mhm.
ideally, kind of try and, that might be a good steer in the beginning of how much to price based on how long you think something's going to take you. But if you can move away from that quite quickly, then that's probably more helpful. And then Cindy Gallop says that the price should be the highest amount you can say out loud without laughing. That's kind of like, I don't necessarily use that as a guide, but the lower end that we say on the podcast is like the lowest that you wouldn't resent.
Yeah.
So like somewhere in between those two numbers is probably about right, because you don't want to be doing work that you're like, oh man, I'm only getting paid X amount for this, and then you're not going to be giving your best work.
Yeah. Love
One
that.
last thing, actually, Ben might mention this part, is about how sometimes you can price yourself out of a job by it being too low. I don't know if you want to say something on that, Ben,
Mhm.
because that's your experience more so.
Mhm. Mhm.
Pricing is such a difficult thing. I think when you start, when you become freelance, especially if you're part of a community, you'll hear the advice like charge your worth or charge your value, the value you're giving to the customer. So Mel's absolutely right. Would always say, try not to exchange time for money. But to get to the bottom of your value and your worth, especially if you're just starting out, it's quite a difficult thing to do, because how do you put that into a context of what you do? So Mel's talked about maybe look at kind of what you need to earn to start with and try and work something out along those lines. But I would always say to people, try not to compete on price. And it sounds like such a daft thing to do, because if you're coming into a crowded marketplace, if there's lots of people who do what you do, surely you want to win the job, right? You want to give a price which means somebody will pick you. And if that's the lower end of the scale, then hopefully there's part of your personality or your offer which has appealed to them. But it's just a rocky road to start out on, and it will lead to long-term difficulty when it comes to then charging what you're actually worth and raising your prices. So if you can not compete on price in the first place, and the way to do that is to really refine your offer, really make yourself almost irresistible in the way that you promote yourself to people. But just to answer the first question, to go back to that first question, Joe, of like what
Yeah.
the first steps that somebody should take, Mel's absolutely right with all the due diligence, but my thing would be, how can you differentiate yourself to the other people that already do what you do? Because
Mhm.
there'll be hundreds on this call that do the same as us, that do the same as other people. So what's just the little way that you can tweak your offer? What makes you you? And how can you show that? Because then that's that first step in just getting away from, I'm only going to be considered for this job if I'm the right price, which is something to get away from, definitely.
Love that. And like, obvious a follow-up question here, Ben, but it's a good one nonetheless. How did you do that? How did you start to find your differentiation point? Because a lot of people will identify themselves by copywriter, for example, freelance copywriter, etc. But how did you add that depth or nuance or positioning to make you stand out?
Initially, it was telling the story of how I got to what I was doing. So the
Hmm.
window cleaning kind of thing became a bit of a joke, but it was something at the very start that just made me a bit different.
Yeah.
But the relevance to other customers or to other people was that I'd built a business. So
Mm.
when it came to a customer coming to me and saying, "Can you write some copy for us?" It wasn't necessarily just they were coming to Ben, the copywriter. They were coming to Ben, somebody who's got the experience of almost doing what we're trying to do. They've sat on both sides of the table. They've talked to clients. They've talked to employees. They know they know the relevance of both of those things. So whether it was internal communications or whether it was customer facing stuff, that was my little differentiator at the start. That, yeah, you're coming to a window cleaner, but it's somebody who's got the practical experience of building a business. Actually, it sounds ridiculous. I leaned away from it. I didn't lean all the way into it. I felt a bit embarrassed about it.
Mm.
And when I did lean away from it, inquiries dropped off and actually work dropped off a bit. So it might be something that you have to get comfortable with in terms of telling your own story. But I think you just need to be honest with yourself and look at yourself in the way that other people would look at you. Because that's a really difficult thing to do, is to look at even I still find it, I still say to Mel now, like, is this all right? Is this anything? Is what I'm saying, does it have value or is it relevant? And actually, if you can put yourself outside yourself a little bit and look at yourself in the way that other people do, you'll start to see the things that are important and that are good and that are attractive. And if you can then have the confidence to lean into those a little bit, that will make you kind of attractive to clients and to other people looking for what you do.
Can I just chip in with something we did, Joe, on our personal branding episode for Indie Business Club? We asked each other to say, was it three? I can't remember. Three words that how we would describe the other one, and then three words that we'd describe ourselves, and then like saw what matched up. And then I did the same thing with a group of freelance pals as well, some of whom are here. Hello. And that was a really useful exercise because we got, I think there were 5 of us in total in the little group. So we each of us got 25 words that other people, because we did 5, I think we did 5 each, 5 words.
Yeah.
So that was really eye-opening to see how other people see us. And it doesn't necessarily match up with how you see yourself, but that's what, if if you can get a bit of external feedback about what you're like, how people perceive you, that can be really, really useful as long as you do it with people that you trust. Yeah, as Erin said in the comments, it was a brilliant exercise, so highly recommend people do that.
Love that. And I guess this so naturally leads on. So the next question that we thought we might ask today, and we don't want to focus, by the way, exclusively on the beginning of the freelance journey. It just happens to be where we're spending a lot of our time. But I was going to ask about finding your first clients, but I think a better question based on what the two of you have just spoken about is working past the embarrassment of sort of advocating for yourself and feeling okay speaking about yourselves. Now, I appreciate this will be, I mean, maybe there is just power in acknowledging it in the first instance and just sort of going, we all feel embarrassed to sort of be speaking about ourselves and advertising our services. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a necessity. So, I mean, Ben, you spoke about it so eloquently a moment ago. Have you sort of got past the cringe factor of sort of marketing yourself and putting yourself out there and speaking about yourself, or how do you go about doing that?
Mel, have I got past the cringe factor of speaking about
just,
myself?
just shaking my head saying no. Sorry, Ben. Look at you now, you go, boy.
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing to do for anybody.
Mhm,
I mean, I'm just a window cleaner, at the that's why
mhm.
that was the thing when I lent into it at the start.
Yeah.
That's why I lent away from it because it was like, oh, I'm kind of feeling like I'm just a window cleaner. Not that there's any window cleaning is a great job. You can earn
It's
a
a
lot of money
wholesome
and you get
career.
to work outside. It's nice. Um, no, I haven't got past that cringe. No,
Mhm,
definitely not.
mhm,
I don't know whether I've admitted that to myself before, but yeah, I definitely haven't got past the cringe of being so overt about why you should work with me. I'm good. I'm much better in person than online. I tell people this
mhm,
all the time.
mhm,
So if we meet in person, I'm very confident. I'm very happy to talk and kind of to tell you what I'm about and how I could help. And I find it much more difficult online, whether that's just the kind of brain to pen connection of writing it down and then pressing publish.
mhm,
I think I've got better at it, and the more you do it, the more you definitely get better at it. But the thing that's absolutely helped is the collaboration between me and Mel, but also between me and Dave as well, and then just making yourself part of a community online where
mhm.
most of the people in it are friendly and are going to be supportive and kind of lift you up in some way. And that's how I get over it, I think.
Love it. How about you, Mel? Because like this was something that like we were speaking beforehand, and this was something you specifically raised. So it feels like it must be at least part of your thinking and a part of your world to sort of move past that embarrassment into a place of like, I
Yeah.
don't know, being okay with self-advocation.
Well, I started posting on LinkedIn when more when Twitter started going downhill, and I'd got really good at just going bleh on Twitter and just splatting out my brain farts. And I thought, why don't I just do that on LinkedIn as well? So I kind of brought the Twitter energy to LinkedIn and just decide. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I just decided to be confident. I know that's not very helpful to people who aren't confident about posting. But like Ben said, the more you do it, the less cringe it does feel.
Mhm,
I have near dangerous levels of self-belief. It's a problem sometimes, because I repeatedly told myself if I don't champion myself. I've got no boss to give me a promotion. I've got no PDR, like annual review, to say you're doing great. So I have to do that myself. And if you approach social media with like a, oh, no worries if not, sorry to be a bother kind of attitude, then people aren't going to have confidence in you as a freelancer. They're not going to look to you for advice. They're not going to see you as a thought leader. Sorry, I hate that term, but you need to be projecting the best version of yourself, while it's still, it's worth acknowledging the difficult times as well, because that's how you can connect with other people in the industry and show that you're a human being. But I do wish that more people would shout about how great they are. And yeah, we were talking just before going on about the term shameless, because it's got negative connotations, as has nepotism. And obviously both of those things can be a bad thing, but I think with shameless in particular, posting without shame is a good thing. So why is it, and I think it's especially bad for women, who can be seen as being a bit too big for their boots sometimes if they're showing off online. But you have to do it. You have to post about what you're good at. You have to post about your achievements. Otherwise, no one will know. And why would they choose you to work with if you're not showing up and showing off in a nice way? So yeah, I feel quite passionate about the fact that people should brag a little bit more online and try and get over. I do completely get that it makes people go, ugh. I know people who will spend all day editing a LinkedIn post before they hit send, but actually the best thing you can do is just get it out there in its natural form, because then it's going to sound the most like you. Whereas if you spend all day surgically editing it and making every word perfect, then it's going to sound like anyone else. So yeah, I strongly advise people to try and get in the habit of getting over that cringe and put a bit of themselves out there.
It feels really, really important, and just to spend a little bit of time on it. And there's so many great comments coming in. We've got folks both empathizing with the point. So we've got Emily saying, I struggle so much with the confidence. But we've got other folks sort of quoting Kirsty Horse, the like a Kirsty Horse, who
Yes.
says, wince and send,
Wince
which
and
is
send.
a lovely way
I
of
love
doing it. And I think it's
Yeah,
one of those
I don't
things
want to sound insensitive to people who do find it difficult, because I know people that really struggle with it. But no one else is going to post it for you unless you get a VA who can post for you. I know someone that does that, and then because even though she's written it, knowing that she's not having to hit send, do the wince and send, that's a bit easier for her.
I like that. I like Trevor's alternate version here, which is publish and be damned. So we got a lot here. Let's head into the building of new clients, finding new clients stuff. And so I said that I wouldn't specifically ask about the first client, but I've had some folks in the Q&A feature. I've had some people in the chat feature saying, can we actually ask this question?
Mm-hmm.
So can we add these things together, which is your first client, but then also how you've gone about adding clients as you've gone throughout your freelance career, and the most effective ways that you've found to sort of bring new clients in? Because I think this is something which a lot of folks will struggle with, or particularly don't know how to do. So Ben, if we go to you first.
My first client, if we just take my first client as a freelance copywriter, I was in a networking group, a traditional networking group in person, called BNI for the other business, when I decided I wanted to kind of change my life and change roles and whatnot. So I had that ready made. I just put it out there that I was changing, that I was good, and that this is what I wanted to do. And I was immediately ruthlessly taken advantage of by a website developer who hired me to write some pages for his clients at a really low day rate. It was a good experience, as daft as that sounds, because it showed me what I didn't want to do and how I didn't want to go about it, and actually how I had to be more intentional about the type of work that I wanted and the type of work that I reached out to get, and that actually it was in my control to get that kind of work, So that was it. That was the first way, and I'm no longer a member of those kind of networking groups. I'm much more enjoy things like this, but it served its purpose at the time.
Nice. I love that. And how about as things progressed and like your I don't want to, it sounds cheesy to call it client acquisition these days. How does it work for you these days? Your most effective way of
I mean,
bringing folks in?
I think there's, I think everybody will be focused on the organic way of bringing in clients using social media, traditional
Hmm.
marketing, obviously. So I think when you're on social media and when you do social media marketing, it's easy to forget about that traditional type of marketing where you do cold outreach,
Yeah.
whether that's I mean, I've never done it on the phone, but whether, putting yourself out there in different ways, either identifying clients that you want to work with and sending them a letter, doing that kind of direct mail. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, and there's not a massive return on investment all the time. So it can be hard to do
Mhm.
that. But there's loads of different ways. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, rather than just those kind of the things that we would all recognize, like social media marketing, is I've acquired clients by buying them. So I've bought leads in the past, and I've this is how Copy or Die started with Dave.
Mm.
Dave had too many leads, and he just wasn't doing anything with them. I said, "Why don't I buy them off you?" And at the time, that was almost a sliding doors moment, I suppose, because around that time there wasn't a lot of business coming into the freelance copywriting side of things, and the window cleaning business just kept growing without me kind of needing to put an awful lot of time into it. And that was the time that was just coming out of the pandemic, and I was like, maybe I just need to focus on this one thing.
Mm.
Actually, I was talking to Dave and just said, why don't I buy them off you? I didn't have the time to go out and get the leads myself, but I knew that I could put a process in place that would work and connect, kind of connect them, and that they would turn into sales. And that's how Copy or Die started. I did that. I paid him a finder's fee every time I, you know, closed one of those leads. I reached out to people like Mel and other people in my network who could do the work with me, and that little business began to grow. And that eventually, Dave and I eventually formalized that into Copy or Die. But I think you've got to be slightly creative. If work's not coming in, then you have to think of other ways to try and do it, and that was one of them. And then there's all those traditional other ways that and Mel can talk better than I can about social media leads. So I'll pass over to her.
No, absolutely. I just want to like pick up on an element, maybe the spirit of your answer there as well, which is like a, a lot of folks will do cold outreach on stuff like LinkedIn, but the difference of a piece of cold outreach, which is a generic message sent to 1,000 people, versus um, hi, I've taken the time to research your business and I've got an idea which I think may help, and being quite upfront that this is a pitch. I'm not going to say that it's going to work 100 times, but 100 times out of 100. But what I can say is that effort, especially these days, really seems to be a lot more rewarded. And so drawing up a list of 100 dream clients or something like that, and really taking the time to tailor that outreach would be a approach that I'd advocate for and have
Definitely,
used
yeah.
and continue to use with even sponsors for TMM and stuff like that. And it seems to be a better way for me, at the very least, of rather than a thousand outreaches in a day.
Do you find
Um,
that you then, by doing that, you then learn quite a lot about yourself and your own business, and why we talked before about showing your value and how
yeah,
difficult that is, actually putting in the effort like you've just said. I
yeah,
found in the past that when you do that, you start to refine why you're valuable and why you can help, and then
hundred
it's about
percent.
getting the personality over, isn't it? So yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun as much as anything else. Like to set myself the challenge of like coming up with 100 great ideas for 100 great brands. Like I think goes a lot further for me in terms of fulfillment in my role, rather than sort of sending 1,000 messages that are generic and don't have that. Um, and the reality is, for a lot of freelancers, a lot of even small agencies, 10 clients a year, 5 clients a year, 2 or 3 clients, will probably make our year. And so, actually, from that 100, you don't need a huge hit rate to produce something, to bring something into the world that could be really quite great. Um, I'm always worried about on these webinars about speaking about myself a little bit, but Mel, so
Give the
let's
people what they want, Joe. They want to hear from you.
not at all. Mel, how about you? I mean, in terms of finding new clients, Ben's already teed you up with social media, but yeah,
He
could you
has.
could you
And
speak to that?
I always feel a little bit like I should say sorry before I say this,
Hmm.
but all my leads have been inbound so far.
Good,
Um,
good.
but I'm not ruling out, outreach as an option.
Hmm.
Like I said, I brought the Twitter energy over to LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
I've then been I don't want to like dismiss it as being like, oh, it's just easy. You just stick out a post every day. It has involved, 3 years of posting almost every day.
Mhm.
And so I'm proud of it. I'm not diminishing the effort that's gone into it. But I do sometimes think that if all your leads are inbound, it's great and everything, but what you then don't get is to cherry pick from
Mhm.
clients. Whereas if you do outreach and have more clients than you can cope with, then you get to cherry pick like Dave did with
Mhm.
when he then sold some of the leads on to Ben. So I'm not saying it entirely proudly that all my stuff's been inbound, because I do sometimes think, wow, if I set aside some time to do outreach, then
Mhm.
I could potentially grow the business. And that's growing a business more, I should say, grow it more.
Mhm.
And it depends really on what your definition of growth is, because sometimes people will want to increase what they're getting paid for the same amount of time or effort so that they can take Fridays off. Or like you said, I know you said earlier that you do a, a kind of shorter week because you prioritize time with the family, and
Yeah.
you shuffle your time around to fit what the business needs, but also what your family needs.
Mm.
And yeah, I think I've gone off on a slight tangent.
Well, no,
Sorry.
so let
Um,
me, just come to you from the other side here, which is
mm,
that I asked to work with you, Mel, because I loved how you show up. But one of the
gonna
other
make me
things
go
that
hot.
no,
So I've
one
really
of
had to
the other
open the window,
things
Joe. Stop it.
that you do, which I think folks can take something away from, and I think you do this quite naturally, but I think it's a really big thing, is you lean in, and you lent into the marketing meetup community as an example. So you were generous beyond belief, both with me personally, but also with the community. Um,
Aw.
and yes, your LinkedIn was noticeable, but the in-person stuff was invaluable.
Mm.
So like when I spoke at TMM in Northampton, you were the first person to sort of say hello. When I saw you at the digital summit in Nottingham, you grabbed me by the arm and sort of took me in, and like that is first-hand experience of someone who's like got to know someone over the course of time. And I think sort of leaning in to that, that sense of community, looking after folks. It's not like a outbound biz dev thing, but like I pay you a sum every month, and I'm very proud to, and will continue to do so for as long as I can because I see
That's
the
on
value.
camera. That's on camera. No takebacks.
Well, no, that's it. But like, this is how these
Thank
things
you.
work. So,
Yeah, and I did want to mention actually in-person stuff, because that what I've been told, linking it to the LinkedIn thing, I've been told by people, oh, you're just like you are on in real
mm,
life on as you are online. Like there's no difference. And I think sometimes when you meet someone having got to know them online and you see them in real life and they're massively different in their personality, then it can kind of erode some of the trust that might have built up. So I definitely recommend to freelancers and the freelance curious to get along to in-person stuff, because then it links up this tiny little profile picture this tiny circle of a head that you see online to a real human being.
yeah.
And that can sometimes be a bit. Sometimes I'll need to like look someone up while I meet them in real life. Oh, you, yes, I know you.
So
Your
true.
head, your hair's different. But yeah, that can really cement those bonds. And it's not necessarily about seeking clients. It's about seeking friendships with people who will one day think of you, if they need to refer work on, or if they've got a client that needs a so and so and you're the so and so.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the quotes that I always put in all of my talks is about the know, like, trust factor, because lots of marketers will know the term know, like, and trust. But
Mm,
the full quote is, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And it's that refer business to bit that I think is very valuable to freelancers in particular, because I sometimes see people say that, oh, LinkedIn's just full of copywriters writing about copywriting to other copywriters. And there's this idea that you shouldn't just have people in your own industry as your connections, but actually that's really valuable, because you don't know who they're then connected to. And you could be like a hop, skip, and a jump away from a really good client because you know someone in your own industry who knows what you do that's different to what they do.
mm.
So yeah, don't underestimate the power of in-person networking and the potential for referrals. But
Nice.
don't go into things wanting that. I suppose is
Yeah,
my advice. Like go like friendship first, and then
yeah,
other stuff kind of happens.
I love that. No, thank you so much, Mel. Folks, I can see that we've got 17 minutes left and 17 open questions in the Q&A.
Let's go. One a
As
minute.
well as there's just a last little section that I want to sort of make
Hmm.
sure we get in before we head to the Q&A. So folks, if I could ask a favor, which is if you head to the Q&A feature, which is found in your little tool bell down below, and give a thumbs up to any questions that you'd like us answering, then we can make sure to prioritize those questions as we come into the community Q&A section. And you're right, Tamara, it has flown by fast. So it's been wild so far. So thank you very much, and so much taken from it so far. So let's head into sort of pitfalls and things folks should know about the freelance life in general. So I would love to know if there's anything that I'm going to combine questions here. Anything that surprised you, any mistakes that you made, or anything you'd like to warn folks about, Ben, before we before they go freelance, or just to share experience for those who are already freelancers in the chat.
Mistakes is an easy one. That's not saving for tax in my first year.
Nice.
And not having an accountant. I didn't have an accountant in my first year, and I still see loads of people start out freelance and think, oh, it's just a self-assessment tax return, I can do it myself. I'd advise everybody to get an accountant. A good one will save you more than you spend on them. In terms of kind of surprise, I went self-employed to work less, and I
Mm.
absolutely work more than if I was an employee. Um,
Mhm.
and I find always sort of being on a real challenge. I find switching off from work. Not that I'm a workaholic. I don't think I'm a workaholic by any means, but just when you've got a smartphone and you run a business on it, and you've got people emailing you at different times of the night because they're freelancers as well, and people have different work schedules. I find it hard to set those kind of boundaries with myself. I'm fine. I don't think I cross them with other people, but it's the
Mm.
boundaries within myself that I find the most challenging.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And have you found any coping mechanisms, or is it still a unresolved element
Yeah, it
of your
is.
world?
I think it's finding a level of comfort with what you do.
Hmm.
So, like you've got a young family. I think our children are quite similar ages. It's really
Hmm.
hard with them around to not let them see me with my phone. So I bought a little thing called a brick, a little grey brick, which sits on my
Yeah,
fridge,
I've got one
an
too.
NFC chip which bricks my phone. So I have that set up to do that on evenings and weekends,
Nice.
just to try and kind of equalize that relationship with a smartphone and not for it to be in my hands all the time when my kids are around. Um, other than that, it's really hard. It's really, really
Mm,
difficult. If you care about what you do, and Mel will talk
Mm.
about this, I'm sure. If you really enjoy what you do, then doing it doesn't feel like a massive chore when it comes to work. There's obviously times with everybody's job, whether you're freelance or not, where you do things that you'd rather not be doing at a certain time. But actually, it's just hard to sometimes put it down and think, no, I'm not thinking about that now. I find that really difficult.
yeah, yeah, I completely relate. It's we could do a whole session on this, but like, thank you, mate. How about you, Mel? Anything that's surprised you? Any warnings to give, or mistakes that sort of come to mind over your freelance period?
Um, what surprised me is the depth of the friendships and relationships I've been able to make. Um, the two of you are very good friends of mine now, and that's I've got so many examples of people who I've started out just knowing through freelancing and are actually
Hmm.
genuine, really good friends. And that surprised me. And a mistake warn people against is don't give it all away for free. Do
Mm.
give a lot of it away for free. Show your knowledge, show off what you can do and that you know what you're talking about. But don't. So when I first started, I had, as lots of freelancers do, an open invite to grab a bit of time in my calendar on Calendly. Other content scheduling is available, and anyone could just get 15 minutes with me as my first like intro call type thing. And what that meant was I would have a call at like 2 p.m. and then I wouldn't be able to concentrate leading up to it. I'd get on the call, they'd rinse me for my ideas and then do it themselves. So it didn't always happen, but it happened like once or twice, and that was enough for me to go, actually, I'm not gonna do that anymore. Or people would come on and just like talk about their life as a freelancer themselves, and I'm sat there like, this is meant to be for like work prospects. Why are you telling me all about your breakdown that you had at work and why you're now freelance? There's a time and a place for those kind of coffee chats, but don't just give away all your time, because your time is really precious. And Ben nags me about that still, about having calls with people when I perhaps shouldn't. But also, yeah, just make sure that you don't give all your ideas in it. If it is with a prospective client, don't tell them exactly how you do everything, because then you've given away a lot of your ideas, and they might decide to go with someone else.
Nice. I love that. Thank you, Mel. That's dead useful and so important. So thank you.
So I don't actually have a calendar link anymore at all. People have to fill in a form and show me they're serious first.
Well, something having been the other side, which to share from a client side here as much as anything else, you were, and we can't go into this too much because there's so many community questions that we need to make sure that we get to, but you were incredibly direct with us when we first started working together. And I say that in a very positive way. You said, this is my boundaries, here's the contract, here's what we're going to do. And
I treated you mean.
well, seriously, well, maybe if I didn't know you so well, but what that meant was it was very, very clear right from the beginning. And I really appreciated that. And it was, hopefully it's not something we have to ever go back to, but like in the worst
No, you're
case
doing
scenario,
okay so far.
if I was being horrible, then you could say, look, this is what we agreed. But we appreciate that from the beginning. And so like a little bit like the stuff here where we were speaking about feeling okay advertising yourself and stuff like that, I think there's also something really strong here in just sort of saying, these are my boundaries, this is what I'm going to deliver, and being very, very clear on that as well.
And be clear on it in your messaging as well. So I did a post a while back that said 5 reasons not to work with me, and it was if you want somebody that will be on the phone at 4 p.m, that's not me, because I'll be on the school run, those kind of things. So lay that out as early as you can in the conversation, because then the clients that don't like that will go to someone else, and that's a good thing. It's your messaging's got to be about as much about putting off the wrong people as it is about attracting the right people.
Absolutely, bang on. Right, let's head into the Q&A. So there are 33 open questions, 9 minutes. So let's go quick fire.
Got like a speed round, isn't it? This is going to be good. I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, Ben, I'll come to you first. So the top question from Richard Brown is, how do you suggest getting around the problem that when you're at your busiest, there's no time for business development, but that's exactly when you need to be doing it? Richard's never cracked that. And folks, if you've cracked that, put it in the chat feature as well, please, because I'd love to hear your suggestions.
Don't confuse volume with success would be my answer for that one. If you fill up your time with everything, then there isn't that kind of headspace to do the development. And also within your packed schedule, you'll have clients which aren't good for you anymore in one way or another. This is going to take a long time to go into on a speed round, but I've got a friend of mine who runs a really successful business who calls certain clients 50 quid clients, not because that's all they're worth to you, but because you should pay them 50 quid and tell them to go away. And there'll be people like that within your book. And if there aren't, Richard, then have a rethink about your goals, because if your goal is to earn a certain amount and be busy, are you achieving that with the way that your book is, or the way that your work is currently constructed? Or is it time to have a new set of goals and maybe think about the next thing?
Love that, mate. Cracking answer. There was an audible ooh. It's from both of us there. So great answer. Let's go to the next question, Mel, if that's okay.
I mean, after that answer, I can't add anything. So.
Yeah. So we got Mike. He says, you've both mentioned that you do some public speaking. How did you get into doing that in the beginning? And I know, Mel, this was something you mentioned in your intro. So how did you get into it to start off with?
The trick with anything that you want to do as a freelancer is you just say that you do something, and then it magically is what you do. There's no one checking that you do that thing. I put it out there that I wanted to speak at CopyCon in 2024. I put it out there in 2022 at some point, and somebody saw that, and then when they were invited to speak at Nottingham Digital Summit, which is, I've met you there twice now, I think, they said, do you want me to refer you for it? And I was like, yes, please. I did it a little bit in my previous role when I was unemployed. and yeah, it just kind of snowballs. If you start talking about things with authority, saying that you can do it, it helps if you then also learn how to do it well and practice. A gateway way of, I was going to say gateway drug, to getting into public speaking is if you can be a guest on podcasts. Sadly, not ours because it's not an interview based one, but other podcasts. Then you can start building up your repertoire, get your reps in, and also go to Keynote Club. Shout out to Keynote Club, of course, which
Absolutely.
is a fortnightly free session that you can do on Zoom and get better at public speaking.
Love that. And as someone who curates a lot of events, the only bit of advice that I could give is the first one. It was your nepotism point earlier, Mel, but I think it is a fair one, which is get to know event organizers. Like, I
Yeah.
do think it makes a difference because if they know how you project yourself and how you could show up on stage, then it makes a big difference. The second thing is a specificity.
Hmm.
So a lot of folks will come to you and say, I'd love to give a talk,
I
but
could talk about
you may,
anything. That's
exactly,
it.
exactly. And you may be the 10th person who said that day. And so helping them out with like, I can speak about this one title with 3 takeaways, it gives them a steer on where you're going, which enables them to make a better decision if they don't know you quite as well.
Can I make a
Um,
really quick note on that as well about how
Hmm.
that translates into all of your marketing is if you reframe it as how you can be helpful to the people looking for what you do, that takes away some of that cringe that we talked about earlier. So if you can put your messaging out there that you do this kind of talk, it's for this kind of audience, or with your day-to-day work, you help these kind of people do this, solve this kind of problem, and be really explicit and detailed about that, then you are helping people find you and helping people access how you can help them. So I just want to make that connection with marketing
love that.
your business as well.
Fabulous. Thank you, Mel. Let's go to you for the next one, Ben, which comes from Tamara, and there's been some really interesting chat in the chat feature about this as well. So, how do you feel about pricing or putting ranges of prices on websites when it comes to your freelance stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Mhm.
I think it's important that if a client comes to you, your price isn't a surprise to them,
Mhm.
and it will act as a filter immediately because people that can't afford you then won't get in touch, which will free you up to spend more time marketing or dealing with the people that can afford you and do get in touch.
Mm.
If you find that you put your prices on and leads dry up,
Mhm.
you might naturally think I either need to take it down or to lower my pricing. But I think it's then important to, rather than doing that as a first step, to look at how you're then promoting yourself and trying to show that value, which we said, I don't want to contradict myself. That's a really difficult thing to do. But if you've set your pricing at a level, don't be encouraged to come down at any point. Just try and really refine what you're doing. But
Mm.
overall, I think it's a positive thing to have your prices on your website.
Love that. And Mel, I know that you show your prices on your website as well and have spoken about it a lot before. I mean, quickly, is there any additional sort of insight that you could give on pricing on websites?
Just to say that I think it was our very first episode was on pricing, and Tom Garfield gave us a voice note that was great. And he said about how it should be a range on your website, then a narrower range on the call, and then the detailed quote on email, so that you're telling them 3 times, and
Nice.
narrowing in on where that exact price will be as they go along the journey.
Love that. That's really, really smart. Love that very much. Um, okay, next question from Natalie. So Natalie says, how do you manage busier months versus quieter months and not panicking in the quieter periods financially? And I feel a bit bad asking this so late on because it's deep and like I feel this as a larger company than one. I think it's something that a lot of companies feel. But Mel, like, how have you circumnavigated this, or just navigated this challenge?
I think one of the things to always try and make sure you do is not stop promoting yourself. So if you've got a quiet month and you want to attract a particular kind of client, then there's nothing to stop you creating a piece of work on spec that fits your dream client, that you can use in your portfolio, or using that time to learn about something, up your CPD. It's quite a shocking amount of money, or I can't remember if it was money or time, by copywriters spent on their CPD in the Pro Copywriter survey. It's really low. And I just think you are responsible for all of the elements of your business. When things are quiet, crank up the CPD, crank up the work that you do that isn't necessarily work, but reading about around the subject that you're interested in, networking. I just say, don't waste the time. Don't moan about the fact there's no work. That's another thing I see people do sometimes, and it's not very appealing for clients if you're kind of like, oh, I've just been twiddling my thumbs all month. It might be true and authentic, but it's not necessarily going to make people think, oh, I definitely want to work with that person who is doing nothing at the moment and moaning about there not being any clients. So just try and use the time productively. And if you keep on pumping the pipeline, then I've just seen a thing in the chat about the software I said to use to create more work. I don't know what that was. I said spec. I said spec work. I mean work on spec, as in you haven't been given a brief, but you're doing it, setting your own brief. It's not software. It's just a turn of phrase.
Nice, love that. Ben, do you have anything to add to that, just as we
Yeah,
draw the
I
hour to a
really
close?
quickly, I'd look, if you've been freelancing for a reasonable amount of time, look back over previous years or previous months, because it might be a pattern. And if it's a pattern, then you can plan for it. I'd say raise your prices in those months where you're busy, if you can. And I would always recommend people trying to raise their prices regularly. And this is going to sound churlish, and I appreciate that quiet months can be really panicky, but try and enjoy them a little bit, because when we work for ourselves, it's easy to just fill up your time and constantly be on that kind of little hamster wheel. Can you enjoy those moments where it's a bit quieter and perhaps do things that don't involve work or kind of that are fulfilling individually, that kind of thing? But I appreciate that if it is that you're not earning enough then to live, then that is a panic. But yeah, those first two things would be
And
my
just add
advice.
in as well, having said don't put it online that like I've got no work necessarily. Let people in your network privately know, people who are in the same kind of industry. If you've got private WhatsApp groups or Slack channels, then make sure that your peers know that you're available for work, and then they may well be more alert to opportunities that they could refer you to.
That's fabulous. Honestly, Mel, Ben, like, I guess this is why you have a whole podcast dedicated to this topic, because it feels like we could go into so much more depth on so much more. But as a whistle stop in an hour or 61 minutes, then you've been absolutely phenomenal. So thank you very much. And thank you also to the community. Like, the chat feature was just phenomenal. Like, to see you all looking after each other, sharing your experiences as you were, like, I just
That's
want to
the
bottle that.
freelance way. It's the
Yeah,
freelance way.
it's amazing. So you're all incredible. Like, if I could ask two things after today's session, the first is to take to social media and share one thing that you took away from today's session. Like, that would mean the world to us. That's how this community grows. And then also, if you have a moment, then please do take a moment to thank our sponsors. This week's featured sponsor is Plannable. As mentioned at the beginning, they've got wicked features, but all of our sponsors bring these sessions together so that we can bring them to you. So like, they're appreciated, as are all of you. So thank you all. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful week, everyone. Next week, we're back on how to grow a social media presence, how to grow in 2025. So another brilliant session. And with all that said, thank you all for being absolute legends. Have a
Thank you
wicked day,
so
everyone.
much for having us. We've
Thank
had
you,
a
Joe.
lovely
Thanks,
time.
everyone.
Thanks,
Appreciate you
everyone.
all. All right, take care.
Bye.